Yes, everybody, welcome back to Talking Wolves. Welcome back to a new match preview on the channel today. Hope you guys are keeping well. Firstly, apologies for sort of the lack of content from me over the last couple of weeks or so. I've used this international break a little bit to have a recharge, but to be honest, I've just got so much going on at the moment. I really don't know how I've had the time to do anything over the last couple of weeks with day-to-day life. I'm moving house very soon, so exciting things, of course, but at times it makes me sort of think how I even had time sometimes to sit down and record videos, but hopefully we'll be back to normal from this weekend as Wolves are on their travels. They face off against Sunderland at the Stadium of Light in what I would say is the start of a crucial few fixtures for Wolves and Vitor Pereira. A little bit of momentum, a little bit of a platform to build off from before the international break, but still winless, still looking for the first 3 points of the season. Of course, I'll give my thoughts, the latest from his pre-match press conference, and we'll get the Sunderland perspective as well shortly before we kick off. And yeah, our friends over at Betmate, loads of things going on over on the app this weekend. If you want to get involved in that, of course, you've got to be 18 plus, UK residents only, but loads of little games that you can get involved with on the app. You can get involved with a QR code on the screen or in a link in the top of the description down below. Goal scorers, picking the best players from the Saturday 3 p.m. kickoffs, and so many individual matches as well. If you want to get involved in that one, please do gamble responsibly. But yeah, an interesting pre-match press conference from Vitor Pereira. Seemed a little bit happier than normal, especially at the end of an international break where I think he's pretty vocal and makes it pretty obvious that he doesn't enjoy the international breaks, especially with Wolves having so many players on international duty. I'm sure he'll be a little bit frustrated as well because a lot of them sat on the bench for the majority of the break. Some didn't even get a single minute. I don't think João Gomes played any part of Brazil's fixtures. Swanky Chan, who had a knock, who I'll talk about later on, didn't play any part of South Korea's. Mosquera the same with Colombia. So a few players there, which I'm sure would have frustrated him a little bit. But before he was even asked a question, he sort of said that he wanted to apologise, of course, after his red card against Brighton and sort of halfway through the first half, right before we opened the scoring, actually, in that game. Said he was left frustrated by a couple of chances, a couple of loose balls that Wolves gave away, and of course he kicked the football, I think it was into the officials' dugout. But he said, yeah, I want to apologise. I know football is emotional. I am an emotional guy. My behaviour was not proper behaviour for the game. There was a moment of frustration. And he said it cannot happen again, and he apologises. So he's not actually suspended for this weekend's game. But I think he had to put an appeal in by last Monday, and the case or the sort of how the appeal will happen after tomorrow's game. So it'll be interesting to see if he does get a match ban, or maybe part of his little slap on the wrist is that he has to publicly apologise for what he's done. Perhaps, I'm not so sure. But yeah, again, in terms of team availability and what he mentioned, Hwang may have a slight knock. Now there were murmurs in the South Korea camp that he had picked up a knock. I think he had a couple of days not training with the national team, and despite him being on the bench for South Korea in both of their matches, he didn't take any part and didn't get any minutes on the pitch. Jean-Luc Bellegarde, of course, he would have been with Haiti. He's come back with a little bit of an illness, so again, he's a doubt for tomorrow as well. And he touched on other players. Jorgen Strand Larsen, obviously still not at 100% fitness yet. They're still nursing a little bit of that Achilles problem. I think they're just looking after that. But Totti Gomez, who had an illness for the Brighton game, he returns. Matt Doherty as well, who had surgery on his wrist, I believe. He's back in contention for tomorrow as well. So lots of positives for Vitor Pereira if players returning. Of course, Jean-Luc Bellegarde and Hwang, especially a player that, whether we like it or not, Vitor Pereira has relied on, isn't going to be available. But this will now hopefully give a chance for somebody else in that forward area to step up. Gabriel, one of our writers for the Talking Wolves website, did an article earlier on about giving opportunities to the likes of Rodrigo Gomez or Fer Lopez, who neither of them got a single minute against Brighton. Maybe this is the chance. Maybe that's a wait for an unfortunate case, such as an injury, to happen for them to step up and get the opportunity. So it'll be interesting to see. But let's have a quick look at my predicted lineup for today's game. For Saturday's game, I should say, sorry. Sam Johnston to start in goal. I think he's been solid enough and will keep his place in the team. Hugo Bueno at left back, perhaps. alongside Crechi and Santiago Bueno, I think should keep their places at centre-back. It was a fairly successful international break for Santi Bueno, captain in Uruguay for the second game as well. Right back, I've actually gone with Matt Doty. This could easily be Jackson Chachua, but I just think the fact that when we started and switched to the back four, Doc got the nod ahead of Chachua, and the only reason Jackson started the last game was potentially because Doc was injured. But I think Doc could get the nod here, but it could easily be Jackson, like I've just said. I think Andre and João Gomez will both keep their place with Manetti in the midfield in some capacity. And I have gone with Fer Lopez on the left side, but again, that could easily be Rodrigo Gomez. I think Jorgen will start with Jean Arias in some capacity as well. But a few little things. I could see a world where we just see Manetti starting the front three with Arias again and Hwang just comes out and Agbadou straight in. But we haven't conceded a goal whilst playing with a back four. The only times we've conceded over the last couple of weeks is when we switched to a back five towards the end of the game. So I think we have to start with the back four, to be honest. Agbadou had a productive international break. He got some good minutes under his belt. I think he got a goal and assist in their first game. Ivory Coast thrashed their opposition. So hopefully morale and momentum is better with Emmanuel. But I think you have to start a team that seems to be doing okay at the moment in terms of a starting lineup. And it'll be interesting to see those little changes, such as players like Fer Lopez or Rodrigo potentially given an opportunity to see what they can produce and see if they can be given an opportunity. And with Hwang out, do we see potential of Tolu Arokodare perhaps into a front two, or potential a chance for Mateus Mane, not to start, but be in the squad as well? There's so many little things, like Doc, he would have been training for the last week or so potentially with Vitor Pereira, working a little bit closer with him. That's why I think maybe he will get the nod. But we play against a Sunderland team who have started off very brightly, and it will not be an easy task for Wolves. But at the same time, deep down, I know we've got the ability and the quality to threaten them and harm them if we play to the best of our abilities. I'm really hoping that I'm sitting in front of this camera tomorrow talking about Wolves getting a positive result and their first win of the season. But we'll get more of an insight on Sunderland now, as I had the pleasure of speaking with Johnny yesterday from the Roker Report podcast. And let's see his thoughts on the Black Cats and their start to the new season. So then, guys, for the Sunderland perspective this week, I'm delighted to be alongside Johnny from Haway The Podcast. Johnny, thanks for jumping in and joining me today. It's been a long time since we've met Sunderland. I think it was the year we got promoted and obviously gone our separate ways for a short while. But Sunderland now back in the big time, enjoying it. But how you been keeping, mate?
Yeah. It's been, like you said, it's been a pretty good time to be a Sunderland fan, to be fair. It's certainly been with a lot less hardship and less gritting of the teeth that I've been going to the games over the past few months. But yeah, no, it's been a whirlwind, really. This, to be honest, I was actually speaking about this earlier today. This kind of feels like the first game where we get to just like take a breath and be a bit like, okay, we're here now. we're in. Feet are on the ground. Let's get going. So I'm really excited for the game like the weekend. I think it's going to be. I mean, it's a lot of pressure on both of us, without a shadow of a doubt. But no, I'm really looking forward to it. And like you say, it's been a while since we've kind of, overlapped in the divisions, which is nice. Again, we were kind of talking about past games earlier this week on our show, and it was strange. Like you think, the majority of certainly the late 90s, early 2000s, and that Sunderland and Wolves was a pretty staple fixture. But I think it's been 8 years now, has it?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Give or take a few months, yeah. So yeah, it's nice to renew rivalries again.
Yeah, it was funny because our fixtures against Sunderland last time we met was the year you guys went down. Obviously, we won the championship, but we went for a weird phase under Nuno when we could be very, very good in the Premier League. The following year was the same, but for whatever reason, the teams that really struggled, we could never get anything against. And I don't think we scored against you that year, despite you going down. I think it was a 0-0 at Molineux, and then you thrashed us on the final day. I say thrash, but you beat us 3-0 quite comfortably in the end. I was there that day. It was an early kickoff. I think we left Wolverhampton at 4 a.m. for that one. But I mean, coming back into the Premier League, obviously you've seen how the sort of promoted sides have done not fantastically over the last couple of years, but you guys have started off really brightly so far, and obviously a long way to go. But how have you found the opening stages of the season so far?
Well, yeah, it's been I'm debating whether to say it, but I keep saying to all my mates every time we win a game, I'm just sending messages to all the group chats. Oh, you lot said the Premier League was hard. What's all this about? Like, I'm just getting them all in early while I can, and we're definitely, while we're doing all right. But I don't expect it to be that easy for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
no, it's been a bit strange, to be honest. Obviously, the league's changed a lot since we were last here. Not that it was not money driven, extremely competitive and commercially gigantic league when we left, but it feels like even since then, even in the 8 years, it's a long time in football, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the steady eddies who were just there every season while we were there, they've kind of fell into obscurity. I mean, Stoke, Bolton, Blackburn, like you could list through all the clubs, couldn't you? That I remember from my, time growing up as a season ticket holder, just playing them every season. And obviously that's all different now. You've got, Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, again, we could rattle through all the names of the teams, but just the whole complexion and makeup of the league is already a big change. But I think the other thing that I've noticed from a Sunderland sort of selfish Sunderland point of view is it feels very much like the styles of play of the majority of the bottom end and mid-table teams have just shifted so dramatically.
Yeah.
And without trying to be a bit of a hack, everyone kind of goes on about, everyone copies Guardiola and everyone plays football like his teams, but you do really feel it, teams playing the kind of football at the bottom end of the Premier League that, even 10, 15 years ago, you weren't seeing outside of the top 6, 7, 8 teams. And I think that's allowed us then to come in and be a little bit unique by comparison and play a much more solid, stable, defensively sound brand of football, which is the kind of thing that newly promoted teams just did as standard 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But it seems to be just, something of an innovation these days, which is a bit bizarre. But yeah, I think that being a little bit forgotten about has allowed us to come in and really take advantage of it, because the majority of teams in the Premier League probably just aren't used to setting up against that. Which I think is something that, as a newly promoted team, the financial gap's so massive. You've got to try and take every tiny advantage you can get. And so, that's been something that I think we've managed to do well so far. But 7 games in, I'm certainly not counting my chickens.
Yeah, I mean, you've sort of witnessed League One football in recent years as well. And I remember even when we went down to League One, the class and the difference from League One to Championship is one thing, but then from the Championship to the Premier League is another thing as well. So, I mean, you guys would have seen, how different the quality is, but what you have to do in terms of style of play as well. But you're right in terms of the style of play of all the teams. I think it was The Athletic did an article today about this season in terms of how direct teams are going, and all of a sudden long throw-ins are coming back in. I mean, Wolves have been doing it, but I've seen 2 or 3 of the teams that we faced been trying it as well. And it's really interesting that you are right that there are teams that have come up. I think even off the top of my head, Russell Martin, when he came up with Southampton, he thought last season he could come and try and play football. It's just not going to work for a newly promoted team. So what you say in terms of style of play, what is it that Sunderland are doing in particular? Is it sitting deep, 11 men behind the ball? Is it counter-attacking? In your eyes, how is it that Sunderland set up and play?
Yeah, so it's definitely not 11 men behind the ball. I think, there's a time and a place for that, within games and within seasons, absolutely. But that's not, it's not it's not plan A. Mm-hmm. I think the main thing that we do, and I'm saying this as if we're some sort of revolutionary team that's ripping up the rule book. We're not. Yeah. But I think the main strength for us is we're so good at staying compact defensively, while also having a massively influential ability to then just in transition, as soon as we've won the ball back, we can just go like, and again, I hate sounding like such a nerd saying it, but like vertically we can just bang, we're like that immediately, because we've got so much pace in the front 3, which is the amount of advantage that gives you alone, just having people who are rapid. Wilson Isidore, we've got Simon Adingra, we've got Shemsden Talby, who I think he was clocked as the 7th quickest player in the Champions League last season. Mm-hmm. I mean, that tells you immediately, that tells you the whole story. So yeah, we're compact defensively, but we've got so much legs in midfield and so much pace up front. I think it really does allow us to not just to counter-attack teams, because obviously everybody can do that, but I think we're particularly dangerous on the break. And we've already seen that with some of the goals we've scored. I mean, a couple of the goals that we scored, the late goal against West Ham, and we've seen it not necessarily in goals as well, but also like big chances we should have probably done better with, I think, at times, as well as set pieces. Again, as a newly promoted team, you're gonna have to try and abuse set pieces a bit, because it's one of the few equalisers, isn't it, in a game of football? It doesn't matter how many hundreds of millions you've spent on your team, you're gonna give free kicks and penalties and corners away. But yeah, like I say, I think that solid base really does allow us to, and then the midfield is. It's critical, Habib Diarra, who's unfortunately injured at the minute, and Noah Siddiqui in particular, who've come in. I mean, the legs on those lads are just ridiculous. It's incredible. The amount of ground they can cover and the pace they've got is just, it's vital. When you've got a midfield that can get around the pitch as well as they can, it just opens up doors for you that you don't otherwise have. You're able to. It helps defensively and it helps offensively. And when you've got players who can contribute in both directions on the pitch, you're doing something right, aren't you?
Yeah, I think having legs and pace as well is probably underrated a little bit. I know it's obviously a difference between an average footballer and a good footballer can be sometimes their pace and how quick they are. But Wolves are really lacking that this season. I mean, the season we came up, it's probably quite similar to how you describe your Sunderland playing. We finished 7th that season in the Premier League, but our front three had Jimenez with Adama Traore and Diogo Jota either side of him. And Adama was obviously lightning quick, and Diogo had a really good quick turn of pace, and players used to bounce off him as well. Whereas this season, we just don't seem to have that pace going forward. And I think you can tell, and you really struggle sometimes. Like I say, you can win possession, but if you're not quick enough to get the ball up the pitch, you're allowing the opposition to get back. Wolves thrived and played their best football counter-attacking. We're really struggling to do that at the moment. And I think having legs in midfield, like you said, is another thing. And I mean, you look at the midfield at the moment, I'll ask you a question in regards to who's been the better players at Sunderland so far, or the best signings. I have no doubt one of the answers will probably be Granit Xhaka as well, who everyone seems to be pinpointing as a
how did you guess? How did you guess?
Well, I think having legs around him, even though he's a little bit more experienced and maybe not as sharp as he maybe was 5 or 10 years ago, but having the experience around him, I'm sure the technical ability and quality of him makes up for that. An unbelievable football and a great capture, I think, for Sunderland as well.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't be telling him to his face that he needs legs around him to do his running for him. I think he'd just eat us alive in one bite, to be honest. But no, I mean, he's been massive in this team. When you sign a player of his quality, it just gives everybody a lift. And sure. Again, I know it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But it does. Like us as a fan base, we were all dead excited about it. The other players, it must have been huge, and it was obviously instrumental in some other moves that we made, both in terms of bringing in players and in terms of staff, because there's been, Nordi Mukiele, who we brought in a little later. He played with Granit Xhaka at Leverkusen as well. So there's a link that you've got. We've brought in the actual specific member of staff has slipped out of my mind right now, but there was, we've got some other people. I think he used to work at Arsenal at the same time. Xhaka was there for a good few years. So yeah, just massive in terms of the boost it brings, but also footballing wise, the guy's just quality. His ability to read the game and stuff like that is all top drawer. I mean, he's just turned 33. He's won an undefeated Bundesliga. He's done a load of stuff in the game. Came 16th in the last in the Ballon d'Or last year, which I think I say that every time his name's mentioned. But yeah, all of that stuff kind of comes, you take that for granted a little bit. But what's really impressed me and a lot of Sunderland fans, I think, is the way you can actually see him leading the team on the pitch. I think it was against Palace, there was a break in play, and literally half the team went over to the manager on the touchline, and half the team just came and gathered around Xhaka in the middle of the pitch, and you've got them divvying out instructions and stuff. Yeah. And it's the little things like that which are easy to overlook or easy to take for granted. I think something that Xhaka brings is that he's quite clearly got one of those mentalities where it's, doesn't matter what it is, whatever we're doing, let's do it right, and let's put 110% in, which is not that I don't think we had that in the squad otherwise, but I think with such a young squad as well, just to have somebody even sometimes just to keep hammering that home and repeating the same message. Because, I mean, everybody knows, don't you, whether it's your teacher at school or your boss at work or, a manager of your football team, when you hear the same things from the same person all the time, it's easy to switch off, isn't it? And be like, this again. But I think when you've got it coming from somebody who's by your side in the changing room, it must make a huge difference. So yeah, I think all that together, the total package that Shaq has brought, I think has been huge. And again, I mean, I could run through loads of our players because we've had a good start, but I think particularly defensively, Omar Alderete and Nordi Mukele have both been absolutely phenomenal since they've come in. Alderete as well, he's Paraguayan, so he's classic South American mental head case at the back. I think his first touch was Cruyff turning 40 yards outside of his own goal, which was he's one of those. When it's good, it's good. When it's bad, we don't talk about it. And then, like I say, Siddiqui and Diarra alongside Xhaka have been, they've certainly been the most influential in terms of the style of play. Because as we've just talked about, the legs in midfield, they're so irreplaceable, particularly for a team like us, that, having those lads come in and hit the ground running the way they did was so important, because we had a reasonably nice set of fixtures to start the season with, but it's only nice if you win them.
You've
got 14 lads coming in.
Yeah, that's true. No, you're right. You can. I mean, our set of fixtures I thought was okay, and I mean we're sat here and we're talking now. Wolves haven't picked up a win at all, but I think that's what it is. It's important, especially for a team coming up from the Championship, to get a good start, because not that you want to, but you can afford a couple of weeks where you can have a little bit of a wobble.
There's got to be periods, isn't there, where you lose.
AFCON is a big one as well for you guys. You've got a lot of African players as well. So but I think if you can almost get a head start as such, you afford yourself a few weeks without some of those key players as well. So no, that will be interesting. And Wolves haven't had that with their players. We haven't had that. I don't feel like the new guys have settled in yet, and that's my concern. That needs to happen sooner rather than later for us before we sort of get cut adrift. But tell me, Johnny, about the manager as well. I mean, he's not really a household name in English football, but what are your thoughts on him? And tell us maybe a little bit more about him as well.
I'm glad he's not a household name, because if he was, then we'd have to start killing people to keep them quiet. Because I want him under the radar as much as possible. No, listen, Régis Lebris. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I knew who he was when he came in. I'd never heard of the guy in my life, but it was a funny sort of situation he came into last summer, actually, and I think, in a lot of ways, he doesn't get the credit he deserves, because we had been a complete mess in League One. We were a shambles, the Netflix documentary and all the rest of it. But then, we came back in the Championship, got playoffs the first season back, didn't quite make it. Luton went up. And then that second season, we were all kind of thinking, well, we just, finished in the playoffs. This is a decent chance to, the whole season, the wheels just came off. We had 3 managers, we had the same caretaker manager with 2 separate spells in charge, which is never a good sign. And then, we kind of had sort of 3 or 4 months at the end of the season where we knew that we had no manager, but the club came out and said, look, we're going to wait until the summer, appoint somebody then, just trust us. Nobody trusted them because the whole season had just gone to pot. So Lebris comes in eventually, in the summer, and the mood in the fan base was skeptical, shall we say. And so, with all that backstory that he came into, a team that had just finished 16th in the Championship, a lot of people had never heard of him, didn't want him, were unhappy. To come into that situation and just... I mean, he's probably the calmest man I've ever seen. Like, he never gets flustered by anything. And I think you need that to manage at a club like Sunderland, where, as much as I love us, the fan base can be a little bit difficult to deal with from time to time. And he came in, and then to get a team, like I say, that finished 16th in the Championship to 4th, and then to win those playoffs against Sheffield United, who got 92 points, I think, in the end, with a couple deducted for finances. That was already an incredible job. And then he's just taken to the Premier League the same way, to be honest. It's very much been a continuation with Lebris. He's obviously, his plans in games are all different and stuff, but the system, the shape, all that's it's just in place now. There's no dramas of, I mean, look what's happening at Nottingham Forest. Obviously, your old flame getting the bullet from there, or, well, whatever actually happened. Yeah. And then you're bringing in Postecoglou, who's absolute chalk and cheese. Whereas for us, a big, big bonus again has been that Lebris is just, like I say, continuity, systems all in place. The players, by and large, know what the jobs are, which I think then makes your life incredibly easy when you're bringing in so many new faces. And you just, you're saying, right, we're plugging you into this system that everybody else already knows. So, I think he's calm. One thing he has improved a lot, which he didn't have when he first came, was his in-game management. So his use of substitutions and stuff like that, which I think it's always tricky for a new manager, isn't it, to kind of.
I always think they learn on the job sometimes. Like we've seen that a lot. I think managers like Gary O'Neill, I always saw that with, and Bruno Lage as well. It almost felt like as the season went on, especially in the Premier League, it's massive, and the Championship's a massive learning curve. I always thought they got better at that as the season went on as well. So.
Yeah, totally agree, because I think Labrise has absolutely been like that as well. And I think as well, part of it is that he's got a much bigger and better squad this season. You know, we've spent 170 million on it. This is not disparaging any of last season's lads, but, you know, we spent, I think, 1.7 million on most of them. Yeah. So, yeah, I think he's certainly very pragmatic and adaptable. If I'm thinking about, like, the rest of the Premier League, he probably reminds me most of maybe like a Thomas Frank type character. Mm-hmm. If I was picking someone who people are already familiar with, you know, you look at the way Frank's gone into Tottenham and he just goes, right, who are my players? How am I going to work this? I'll just pick a system, no dramas, everything's nice and calm. Whereas somebody like an Ange or, you know, there's other names you could point to in the league where the manager is a little bit more fiery. Yeah. I don't think Labrise is like that at all. So, you know, from a Wolves point of view, what you should be expecting from Labrise is, well, you probably know what formation he's going to play, and you can probably name most of his starting 11, to be honest. But where you'll want to, you know, where he can test you, I think, in game is he has got a lot better at that utilisation of the squad, and he's not afraid to change shape, those kind of things mid game, which I think some managers fall a lot into. You know, I'm taking off a right winger, so I'm putting a right winger on. I'm taking off a left back, so I'm putting a left back on, that sort of thing. Labrise he's pretty, like I say, pragmatic and adaptable, which I know it's sort of damning with faint praise in a sense. Like, yeah, he's got all the basics, but I think a lot of people... That, a lot of coaches can overcomplicate it, can't they? And sometimes you just need somebody who's, you know, nice and steady in what they're doing, which Labrise certainly is. Yeah, no, we've had an issue sort of similar to what you're saying, but in a negative way with Vitor Pereira. The last couple of games, I think the Brighton game in particular, we were 1-0 up, looked pretty comfortable, and he changed shape and went very defensive, which a lot of Wolves fans, I know we're desperate for a win with saying, what are you doing? Because Brighton were there for the taking, in my opinion. And then they took Strand Larsen off, and he didn't bring another number 9 on. So you haven't really got a focal point. And I think even at 1-0, you still need somebody up there to hold the ball up and be that focal point. So I'm hoping that his in-game management improves massively this weekend as well. But Johnny, going into it, thoughts and potentially finish off with your score prediction as well. Yeah, it's not an easy game to call this one, I think.
I think both... Well, I think I said the other day, I think Sunderland fans will go into this one still feeling quite positively because you look at where we are in the table, but both sets of fans, I think, will feel a little bit of pressure on this. I mean, this is a massive game for Wolves. I think Sunderland have got a little bit more breathing space, but I suppose after your last game was the defeat against United, you want to try and bounce back if you can.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a 6-pointer, really. I know it's very early in the season and, you know, a lot can happen between now and May, but, you know, from a Sunderland point of view, for me, I'm not looking at this as a must-win, but I'm almost looking at it as a must-not-lose.
Yeah.
Because I think the momentum shift from you lot gaining those amount of points on us, obviously we'd then be sacrificing points. Who knows what Burnley's going to do, Leeds and West Ham and Brentford and the rest of the teams that are probably going to be in and
Could
around.
Could be like a rival for the bottom chunk of the table, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels very much like a sort of, it's like a bottom 6 that's going to form, I would imagine. And this feels like the kind of game that could be pretty crucial in that come the end of the season. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be tight because I think Labrise is probably going to have a similar outlook in that, look, we're going to want to win the game. Yeah. And I think we're just about bookies' favourites, with obviously the run of form user being on, but like you say, with the fan bases, I think both fan bases are going to be quietly confident while also panicked about a horrible, like, banana skin embarrassment type situation unfolding. So from a Sunderland point of view, like I say, with a home team, so we're going to have to kind of make the running and try and dictate the game a bit, but I don't expect us to be playing sort of expansive, free-flowing, you know, stick 7 men forward type of football. It's still going to be very structured and very organised. So I think it's going to be quite a tight game. I don't see there being more than 1 goal in it either way. If I'm being honest, and you have played some decent stuff, even though you've not had the results. So, you know, we can't take it lightly. I think we took Man United a bit lightly which is a mental thing to say about going to Old Trafford.
I think there is just that thing about United at the moment. I think because there's so much negative press, I think a lot of I think Wolves fans would be as well. You go into that game thinking, oh yeah, United aren't what they used to be. We should get a result there. Because it just always seems to be that every weekend Man U lose for some reason.
Yeah, because the bar for them is up there.
Yeah.
So even if they're just here, feels like they're on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I think we took them a bit lightly, and I think we named too direct and open a team.
Yeah.
You know, we had Arthur Masuaku and Simon Adingra as our left back and left winger. And listen, Masuaku's quite pretty on the eye when he's on the ball. He's not pretty on the eye when he's getting 2v1 in defence at Old Trafford. So I expect us to certainly set up way more like our usual selves, I think, in this game. So don't expect it to be sort of 4-0 by half-time or anything mental like that. I think, obviously, I'm going to go with my heart a little bit. I'm going to say Sunderland are going to win. But yeah, I think I said 2-1 when we did predictions earlier. So I'll stick with it just for the sake of consistency. But I wouldn't be surprised to say 0-0, to be honest.
I think it'll be 2-1 either way, I think. But this is a big game for us. I dread to think what the reaction will be if we lose after the game, because, that'll be 8 games for us without a win. And no disrespect to Sunderland, this is a game, I think even without the good start you guys have had, I think Wolves still need to be trying to get points from these sort of games, like we said earlier, because there's going to be a bottom chunk of 6 or 7 teams. And I have no doubt, I mean, both teams might surprise us, but I have no doubt both teams are going to probably be involved in that sort of battle.
I'd like to say we'll finish 8th and qualify for Europe by the back door, but I don't think
is there a portion of Sunderland fans getting a little bit overexcited about the start, or has it been pretty level-headed so far?
To be honest, it's hard to tell because we've all been so miserable for so long.
Yeah.
How do you tell when you're getting too far ahead of yourselves? No, look, I think the vast majority of fans are pretty realistic about the fact that, the start's been amazing, but the whole season's not going to be like this. Yeah. There's a hell of a long way to go. I mean, we kind of need to win this game more than anything else because our next run of fixtures is like Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Everton at home. There's some pretty tough games in there. And then before you know it, it's December where we've got Liverpool, Man City, Newcastle.
And AFCON involved in that as well.
And then AFCON hits, and then we've got Brighton, Leeds, Man City again, and then the FA Cup starts. Yeah. So, between now and then it could be slim pickings in terms of wins, but just got to hope. I think the majority of Sunderland fans are basically just ironically getting too carried away at everything because we're all too petrified to be earnest about how excited we actually are. Yeah. No one wants to be the one who goes early and then gets the heart stamped on. But yeah, I think quiet optimism, but still a healthy dose of worry for the back end of the season would be how I'd sum it up.
I think for the Wolves end, I mean, I'll speak to I always try and remain positive, but I speak to quite a few Wolves fans, obviously. I had somebody at work yesterday he's going up to the stadium with a light. And I said, I've got a feeling we might get a result. He shook his head. He's like, nah. I think he's just resigned. He goes, I genuinely can't see when we're going to win a football match. So I think that sort of says the attitude and the tone amongst the Wolves fan base at the moment. So it could be like I said, Saturday evening could be a dangerous place on Wolves social media, to be fair. But Johnny, I really appreciate you jumping on to the channel. Sorry for jumping in there. So where can people find you in your podcast if they wish?
Yeah, so if anyone's got an interest, at Roker Report on Twitter, that's your gateway, or rokerreport.sbnation.com is the website. So Haway The Podcast is obviously the daily podcast. You can find that just anywhere you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, all the rest of it, whatever. Boring. Yeah. And then we've got, articles about Sunderland and the games and all that jazz on the website. And then there's about 50 odd of us who all contribute and speak and write and stuff. So I'm not going to list all of our names and social media handles, don't worry. But yeah, Roker Report on Twitter is kind of your one-stop shop. No,
brilliant, mate. And I really appreciate you jumping on. And after Saturday, best of luck for the rest of the season, mate. And I'm sure I'll catch you for the reverse fixture as well.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And all the best for you for the rest of the season after Saturday, of course.
Cheers, buddy. I'll catch up soon.
Cheers, fella.
So big thanks to Johnny. I'll make sure I leave a link to Haway The Podcast and the Roker Report, guys, in the description down below. And it'll be great to get your thoughts and score predictions in the comment section as well, guys. Like like I said, I'll be back tomorrow evening after the game, fingers crossed, with a smile on my face and Wolves getting a positive result. And once again, apologies for sort of the lack of content over the last couple of weeks or so. I'm hoping I'm in a little bit of a better place come the next international break. However, that's probably when things will get a little bit crazier for me. But I'm going to try my best to keep things ticking over for you guys, because I do appreciate, obviously, the support that you guys do give me as well. And as always, enjoy your evening, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you on the next one.